Today's topic is local use of force account, which will be presented by Larry Taylor, who's also a District 7 consultant for the Safety Office, and also the former District 7 LAP administrator in Tampa, Florida, in District 7. So with that, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the program. It's, as I mentioned, this is a District 7 Local Agency Traffic Safety Academy. We provide webinars regarding safety-related issues to enhance your local safety programs. This is the 4th year of the Academy. It started on January 6, 2016, and they usually run in the time frame of 10 to 12. Normally they run about an hour, hour and a half. There's scheduled on through December 14th, and topics are a minimum 1 hour, but no more than 2. And the length of each webinar is based on the complexity of it. I just listed here also 2 links. First one is to register for the webinars, and I want everyone to understand when you do register, you're registering for all of them at one time. So it'll be your decision to whether or not you want to attend or not. And then Anthony's already discussed the link to the Safety Academy webpage. Wanted to show you today is the topic today is local use of force account, but also wanted to highlight that we're also having the City of Tampa roundabouts along 40th Street next Wednesday. This was added recently. And then we have 2 additional ones because in January 6th we didn't have these additional 3. And I have 3 other ones coming online. And one of the delays has been the fact that you have to coordinate dates with presenters' ability to have an open date to present the topics. So, but these are the ones that are coming forward. You can see them out on the web page. And then these sessions are submitted for AICP CM credits, and as I mentioned, the topics are currently being finalized for the rest of the year. If you're a professional engineer, you can fill out a form for PDHs, and you send it to Larry Hagan, and that information's out there on the web page also. And with that, here's my contact information, so if you ever have any questions or need assistance, you can either drop me an email or give me a phone call. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larry Taylor.
You should have a prompt on your screen, Larry, asking you to show your screen.
There it is. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Lawrence Taylor, actually. Generally go by Larry. And as Dennis mentioned, I am a District 7 safety consultant, and I serve in the capacity of the LAP project manager for the District 7 safety office. And the focus of today's session is, of course, force account. And, well, just to give a good start, about 40% of all traffic accidents are occurring on non-state highway system facilities. And of course, through the Highway Safety Improvement Program, District 7, as well as other districts and central office, we're seeking to reduce the number of severe injury and fatal crash statistics throughout the district and the state. Significant infrastructure improvements will most likely be implemented through the local agency program. And in order to implement, a local agency must be LAP certified in order to implement a LAP project. And the LAP force account is an option for implementing an off-system infrastructure improvement. Wanted to give a little bit of LAP history. LAP was created under the authority for LAP resides in Law 102-240. Most of us recognize that as the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act of 1991, or ICE-T. Now, under that legislation, the State Department of Transportation were given the authority to delegate the expenditure and the carrying out of construction projects to qualified local agencies. Now, in order to qualify, become qualified to perform a project of that type, we have a LAP certification program that each agency must go through. Florida local agency program was patterned after that in Washington State. And here in District 7, we certified our first agency in 1997, and I believe that was the city of Tampa. Now, LAP has definitely evolved over the years. I've been involved in this program since, I think, 1998, and it's a different animal now. It's no longer a just give them the money program as it was during the early days. In fact, Federal Highway is very much involved, and they now consider LAP to be an area of high risk. And because of that finding, there's an increased level of district oversight on all LAP projects. There's also an increased level of central office review. And there's an increased level of Federal Highway review and involvement as well. And projects of divisional interest, which are referred to as POTIs, those are what used to be called Federal Highway Full Oversight Project. Federal Highway is selecting more and more projects to be POTIs. And some of those that are selected as POTIs, they're not necessarily complex projects, but they are projects that caught their attention for some reason. That reason can vary from a known public involvement issue or any known issue that could create problems down the road. The way LAP is structured now, there are LAP checklists for federally funded professional services contracts. That was an area deemed risky due to the way the local agencies were acquiring professional services contracts. So that checklist was put into place to sort of ease that process and make sure all of the requirements are met. There's also a LAP checklist for construction contracts. That one's been around a little longer than the professional services contracts checklist. That checklist came into effect late 2005 in response to a Federal Highway review that showed that the requirements for federal aid contracting were not being adhered to. We now have a thorough district review of the local agency draft bid document, and here in District 7, that document is put into ERC for electronic review and comments, as are plans and the spec package and the checklist and quite a few other documents. Also, the LAP manual is being continually reviewed by the current state LAP administrator, Ms. Lorraine Moyle. There's also an improved and increased review review of LAP projects. Now, on LAP projects in general, my experience, my previous life as District 7 LAP administrators, I noticed that coordination, cooperation, and communication, which I call the 3 C's, that's a most essential element between the district LAP staff and the local agency staff. Now, if the project, the LAP project is also a safety project, then the safety review team is added to the mix and will be much more involved in the project here in District 7. Another key element is that the safety funding availability, or the year that it's programmed, considered to be being considered for programming, it must mesh well with the agreed upon local delivery schedule. Everybody has to be reading from the same sheet of music to ensure the successful delivery of a project. And that delivery schedule must include all project phases, the deliverables, and the milestone dates. Here in District 7, we have a template that we use that includes a number of milestone events that are tracked and measured, and I'm sure all of the districts have something of a similar nature. Again, all of this is basically from the District 7 perspective. And in District 7, we have performed several types of safety projects using LAP as the delivery method. We've done a number of signal projects, everything from and intersection improvements. These projects will sometimes include mast arm replacement, a brand new signal, turn lanes at intersections and such. Safety funding can also be used to fund lighting projects. One of the areas that we are very big into here now in District 7 is lane departure remedies. And we've installed paved shoulders, safety edge, and AVPMs, which is the acronym for audible vibratory pavement markings. We've done a number of those projects here in District 7. We've also reached out, joined forces with the local agencies to perform median modification projects, pedestrian safety improvements, and also we're currently working on our first complete streets project with the City of St. Petersburg. There are a number of essential LAP elements, and of foremost concern is the local agency's ability to successfully deliver a project. And that is, again, one of the reasons we go through the LAP certification process, to try to get a good feel for the local agency's ability to deliver. And I must add, on schedule. Also, on federally funded projects, there must be public awareness and public involvement. That does not necessarily translate into a public hearing, but public support is definitely needed, and a lot of agencies are holding public meetings, but not necessarily to the point of public hearings. As part of the project selection process, it is essential that constructability and field reviews are done to make sure that the project is actually doable. Right-of-way is also a key element. Many people seem to be under the impression that if a project needs right-of-way, that's an automatic kiss of death, but that's not true. If right-of-way is needed, it can be acquired through the LAP process, but it must be done in accordance with the Uniform Act. And I've dealt with a number of local agencies that'll say we don't need right-of-way. And what has actually happened is they've already gone out and recently acquired it. But again, that acquisition has to be in line with the Uniform Act. Ultimately, the project must be production ready, and the local agency needs to work closely with the district LAP staff to ensure that production readiness. Work program and project scheduling. As you can see, all of these fit in together. That project schedule must mesh with the year that the funding is programmed in work program to avoid taking a production hit and the project, the funding being required to move forward into the next fiscal year. That's not a situation that either the department or the local agency wants to be in. There are numerous methods of construction that can be used, but the decision on how that construction will be accomplished is needed during the design process or earlier. You should not wait until you're ready to request federal authorization for any of the project. And regardless of the method, the competitive bidding method is the most prevalent means. but it can be waived for cost-effective reasons. Now, I've shown negotiated contracts here, but again, that is very rare and is typically used in emergency situations following natural disasters and disaster declarations. However, the focus of today's discussion is the local agency force account. Now, the transition to force account. First of all, the project has to be funded in the department's work program first, and that has to occur before the LAP designation can occur. And since force account is basically a subset of LAP, all of that must occur prior to being able to consider using force account. All of the essential LAP elements are still in place. The 3 C's are even more essential because of the sensitive nature of utilization of force account. And this sensitivity can lead to additional scrutiny by Federal Highway, the district, or central office. And Federal Highway may decide to monitor this project as a project of divisional interest, as a PODI. Now, for the force account overview. Force account is authorized under CFR Title 23 and the 635.201. And that speaks to the ability and the requirements relative to force account construction. And force account is not applicable in every situation. And if you will visit that CFR 635.201, you will see the applicability and a number of definitions that are there. And the term force account means the direct performance of highway construction work by a state transportation department or a county or railroad or a public utility company by use of labor, equipment, materials, and supplies furnished by them and used under their direct control. Force account means there will not be a contract issue, but that it must be cost effective, and a finding of cost effectiveness must be completed by the local agency. It must be approved, submitted to the department, and approved in advance by the department. Cost effective is defined as efficient use of labor, equipment, materials, etc. And all of that lends itself to the finding of cost effectiveness, which must be completed. There's also, force account also speaks to responsible charge. And the responsible charge language basically states that, again, that's CFR 635.105, 23 CFR 635.105. And what happens is there must be a supervising agency or a responsible charge on every federally funded project. Initially, the State Transportation Department, or the DOT, has the responsibility for constructing all federal aid projects. But as mentioned earlier, ICE-T allowed the delegation by the department to local agencies that are suitably staffed and equipped. But that does not get the department off the hook. The department is still held accountable by Federal Highway, even if the work is delegated to that local agency. And again, if force account is to be utilized, and this cannot be emphasized enough, the local agency is required to submit a finding of cost effectiveness. The district will review and approve all force account requests to ensure compliance with the appropriate CFR. Force accounts are accepted by Federal Highway under certain conditions. And those conditions include that the project should be low cost in nature. If you've got a large dollar project, it needs to be competitively bid. But over the years, we have discovered that some of the lower cost projects, they are not good LAP project candidates because of the federal requirements that come with it. So force account is generally used on a smaller scale project, and but again, that cost effectiveness, you have to demonstrate that cost effectiveness. And also the local agency must have sufficient staff and resources to carry out the project. Excuse me. Many of the local agencies do not have that. So the use of force account is not something that every agency will be able to do. During the recent downturn of the economy, I know a lot of local agencies downsized, they reduced staff, they lost staff, they gave up positions, some discontinued certain functions in order to be able to survive the economic climate. Now, those entities, if they did not restaff, they may not be a good candidate for local force account or LAP in general. One of the things that many of the local agencies have found attractive with force account is the fact that Davis-Bacon wage rates do not apply on local force accounts. And also, the local agency staff salaries, if deemed appropriate, can be and will be reimbursed. There is a process for being able to use the force account. The local agency decides to pursue the project force account utilization. And again, that is the local agency decides to pursue. And just because that local agency decides to pursue it, it's not an automatic that it will be granted. So the local agency request is sent to the district for permission. And again, that approval must be sought early. You cannot delay until construction is imminent because it could cost you your construction funding, as the project may not be able to move forward in a timely manner during the year that the construction is funded in our work program. The district is a partner in this process. The district will coordinate and review the requirements with the local agency. We'll hash out differences, seek clarification, and do a thorough review of the local agency's desire to utilize force account. Federal Highway actually issued a directive on force account. It went into effect March 12th of 2012, and it clarifies much of 23 CFR 635.204. And again, that is the CFR that deals with determination of a more cost-effective method. Now, that directive also defines a number of pertinent terms, and it includes a pretty good section on frequently asked questions. Again, you can Google it and you'll find out, or go straight to the Federal Highway website, and you can find the directive on force account for your own personal edification. Now, using the force account, the local agency must still develop and submit a PS&E package. The plans must be done, the specifications must be done, and the estimate is still needed. So you do not get away from that. And here in District 7, all of the plans must be routed through ERC and approved. The comments will be made by district staff, and the local agency will be expected to respond to those comments within a reasonable time frame. The same thing with the specifications package. It too must be approved through ERC. So an updated estimate will still need to be submitted and approved at each phase submittal. So most of the basic LAP requirements will remain in effect except for the contracting requirements. Now, the local estimate it has to be very detailed, and it should be a good analysis of project costs. Once upon a time, years ago, the local agency simply made a statement saying that we'll save money by not advertising, by not doing certain things that are related to the bidding process. And that proved sufficient years ago. That's no longer the case. The supporting documentation must be provided, and detailed cost estimate is needed. And your analysis will need to show the cost of the owner force performing the project versus the average contractor cost. And basically what happens here is the local agency will need to submit cost estimates or costs from previously constructed similar projects to use as a comparison to the cost of to the local agency. Now, that local cost estimate, it must include all costs. MOT, mobilization, it should list every cost that the local agency expects to incur. The local cost estimate is to include quantities and costs for labor, equipment, and material. So as you can see, this is all encompassing. It's the cost should also include MOT, mobilization, equipment rental, and usage, because what we're looking for is the total cost to that local agency. And again, that estimate will be compared to competitively bid contractor costs on previous similar projects. And the local review and the finding of cost effectiveness should also include, that comparison. Once the local agency has assembled all of that data, they must submit to the district for review. And it must show that finding of cost effectiveness must be just that. It must show that there's a significant savings by using force account in order to be able to move forward. Once it's in the district hands, the district will thoroughly review all of the submitted data. And if the district has questions, they will contact the local agency to resolve any issues, seek answers to questions, and just make sure that everything is in line with the federal requirements. And ultimately, the district will either respond favorably, recommend corrections or requests to the finding of cost effectiveness, or there may be a denial of the use of force account. And if that happens, then the local agency will need to bid the project. Now, here in District 7, success stories, we have quite a few. The number one user, the largest user of force account here in District 7 is the city of St. Petersburg. They've got two active projects, Walter Fuller Park Trail, which was a transportation alternatives project. And that project is, I believe it's still under construction or recently completed. I don't think it's been closed out yet. And the same can be said for the 112th Avenue North intersection improvement that was funded with HSIT funds. Now, the 112th Avenue project, it intersects 4th Street and for the 4th Street North in St. Petersburg near the junction with I-275. And that area, the statistics supported the installation of a traffic signal. It just so happened that the department had a 3R job coming along, and a signal is being provided at that location because the signal met warrants. Now, the median configuration that was needed on 112th Avenue, because on the west side of the road there's a shopping plaza and some work needed to be done, and on the east side of the road there's a big subdivision and some work needed to be done there. So the city of St. Pete entered into a LAP agreement to do the work on 112th Avenue on the east and west sides of the intersection using force account. I believe the construction estimate was right around $100,000, maybe $120,000, and that project has not yet been closed out, I don't believe, but the work is completed, and the city did an excellent job in making that happen. Hillsborough County has also done a force account project. It was a Safe Routes to School sidewalk project along Alexander Street. The city of Tampa has also constructed a Safe Routes to School project, Shehigh Elementary School, and that probably dates back 6 or 8 years. In my conversations with the local agencies, there are a number of reasons to appreciate being able to use force accounts. The time with the bid package and the bidding process is avoided. You still have to prepare, again, the PS&E package, the plans, the specs, and the estimate, but you do not have to go through the process of advertising. And once, of course, as part of the advertisement process, once the low bidder is determined and approved, then the local agency would have to typically, on a design bid build project, the local agency would have to go before its governing body to obtain approval of the contract. Avoiding these steps means that the local agency can move into construction a little faster. And also, again, in dealing with the local agencies, they found that because the local agency is using its own forces, there is no contractor and also no subcontractor involvement. Typically, there is a reduced mobilization cost associated with force account because the local agency has the equipment on hand. It's right there for their immediate utilization within their geographic boundaries. So the mobilization cost should be significantly less. There's also a generally reduced MOT cost. And there's also no contractor unit price markup. You know, the cost that for the materials, it is what it is. There's no markup involved. And so that generally results in a cost savings. There's also less change order opportunities. And one thing that I found very interesting, there's a softened impact on the community. As you all know, that once construction starts, the general traveling public will be impacted. The local agency should be more in touch and in tune with the needs of the community, and much more so than a contractor would be. They should be more sensitive to the needs of their community. They'll have a better idea of what the needs of their community is. The local agency has also been able to have enhanced utility coordination through the use of force accounts. Now, it's not all sunshine and roses. I'm sure that the local agencies do not, they're not thrilled about the significant level of data collection and analysis that is now being required. But this is definitely needed if the federal requirements are to be met. The district also has to perform a thorough analysis of the data submitted by the local agency, and it costs us time and effort to do so as well. And then again, there's the possibility that Federal Highway will see a force account project and decide to review it and become more involved and possibly select it as a project of divisional interest, a PODI. The local agencies have confided that it's requiring, the current process is requiring more time of their local engineers. And but again, this is to make sure that everything flows smoothly and in accordance with the federal requirements. And typically, additional local agency construction inspector effort is required because the local agency will typically perform the CEI function if they're constructing it, the project as well. Now, the cost reduction, the finding of cost effectiveness, as stated to me by our biggest user, should be in the 20% range. If it's less than that, then you may want to consider whether or not you want to actually use the force account. But again, since these are typically small dollar projects, if the dollar amount is low, it may not be an attractive candidate to a contractor, particularly if that contractor is familiar with the federal requirements and the amount of paperwork that's required. It may not be cost effective for them to pursue that route. And again, it requires considerable local agency staff and resources that many local agencies do not possess. Some local agencies will have their own concrete crew, their own asphalt crew. They may have their own testing facilities, but not every local agency has that resource ready and available. So that must be considered as well. I've also been informed that sometimes a local emergency may pop up, which will require a change in priority, which may delay the contract from moving forward as anticipated. But then you also run into the same issue when you have a contractor out there. So it can cause some delays, can cause some issues, but for the most part, that element is present even if a contract is issued. One thing that the city of St. Petersburg put a lot of emphasis on, and this was basically on the Walter Fuller Trail project, traffic control and planning around school events. There was a school located right along the route, and they had to consider the prime hours, the heavy hours, the peak hours for school traffic. They needed to be able to construct around those peak hours, construct around school events. And that turned out to be negative, but again, that same element comes into play even if a contractor is on board. So this is also a pro. This is a reason to to utilize force accounts in these instances, because the local agency should be much more in tune with the needs of their communities.
Larry, we have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Is the local agency allowed to use a consultant/contractor on a portion of the contract for CEI or other?
Yes, I believe that to be true, and got a slight nod from Kristen, so we're good on that. Because again, many local agencies do not have sufficient staff. And again, I love to pick on St. Pete here, but also Hillsborough County. They conduct a lot of their own CEI, material testing and such, but not every local agency has that luxury. And in those cases, yes, you can contract that portion out. Okay, in summary, again, for a project to be a good candidate for force account utilization, it must be low cost and it should not be a very complex project. The finding of cost effectiveness is definitely required, and it requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of research. It requires a great level of detail, and it's incumbent upon the local agency to put that effort in place up front than to play the back and forth game, which can delay a project. And again, close local and district communication, cooperation, and coordination, the 3 C's. And that's not just for force account. I'm sure every district LAP staff would agree that these are essential elements of any project that they're doing. The local agency must have significant or sufficient staff numbers, abilities, and equipment resources to be able to do a force account project. But again, one of the more attractive elements is the fact that LAP contracting related requirements are not applicable, although the plan specs and estimate portion is. And at this point, we can open up for any questions that you may have.
At the moment, there are no other questions in the chat. I'll give everyone a few minutes to gather their thoughts and see if we can have a conversation going.
Okay. All right. Took advantage of the break to have a consultation with the District 7 LAP project manager, who said I should mention the use of continuing services contracts for CEI. They can be used. The local agency can actually secure a contract, federally funded, but again, all of the federal consultant acquisition requirements must be met. But it's a great opportunity for that local agency to take some of the burden off of themselves and have a contractor or a consultant on board to perform these services. The District 7 LAP staff can provide more information in that regard if needed.
Doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in, Larry. Oh. Hello? Okay. It doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in on the chat. I'll go ahead and end the recording, and we'll stay on the line for a few more minutes if anybody has any questions. I don't know if you want to put your contact info or just let folks know that they can, if they have questions about the webinar itself, they can ask you questions about LAP, contact their respective district's LAP coordinator. And, thanks everyone for attending.
Larry, thank you so much for